Hi friends, it's Lauren. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. It's the 25th of the month and it's December, so Merry Christmas and thank you for watching my video today. Now, I know obviously today is Christmas, so most of us have already finished all of our Christmas projects for the year, but I thought today I would have some fun with some products from the Sassy Club. Two cards I'm making today aren't necessarily Christmas themed, but the other two will be in the second half of this video. So I still hope you find some enjoyment for today and maybe start some inspiration for next year. I will be continuing my Christmas videos on the 25th of every month next year. So I hope that they bring you some inspiration throughout 2024. But let's jump into what I'm going to be using today. I'm going to first be using the candy basket dies from the Sassy Club as well as the mouse gingerbread add-on dies. So I could have totally made these Christmassy, but I just wanted to make a classic red, black, and white traditional looking magical mice. I'm trying to be careful how I say this. I'm sure you can pick up what they are inspired by, but I wanted to make these cute little pails like I was making these two mouse characters. So I'm going to show you how I put together my girl mouse. I end up completely readjusting how I make the candy basket for her later on, but I'll talk about that when I get there. So I'm just using some red ink. This is Lumberjack Plaid Distress ink to add some shadow and depth to the red pieces of my buckets. And then I also brought in black soot just to add a little bit to the bucket lid. It's not too noticeable, but I just didn't want it to look flat while my red pieces had shadow and dimension. So you can kind of see it here. It does add a little bit of shadow. And then for the more skin tony colors of these two mice, I'm bringing in Camel from scrapbook.com and just trying to lightly add a little bit of shadow and depth to the faces. I did not add any ink blending to the details of their faces or the bucket handle. They're just small and I didn't think it really needed it. Just the larger pieces have some ink distressed edges. So now I'm going to start assembling my first little bucket together. So I'm going to glue down the top of the pail, and this comes from the original candy basket dies, to the ear add-on piece from the mouse gingerbread add-on dies. And there actually are other add-ons that the Sassy Club has come out with. There's these really cute elf looking ones for Christmas, inspired most likely by like Elf on the Shelf vibes. It's really cute. You could definitely make lots of really cute things, starting with the candy basket dies, which are Halloween themed, and then you can decorate them different ways with the add-on dies. So I've adhered my candy basket topper to the ears, and then I added the face to the actual like bucket part of the basket. And for the smaller pieces, I'm going to just add some liquid glue to the openings and just kind of puzzle piece them back in. So there's these two cute little eyebrows. They both have a nose, and then the girl mouse has a smile with eyelashes, and the boy mouse has a no eyelashes on the eyes, and then like a bigger open mouth, which I think is really cute. So I'm just using my jewel picker and liquid glue to adhere these into, it's kind of like paper piecing or putting a puzzle together, just trying to make sure that they fit nicely within each other. My jewel picker has like a little pokey tool on the other side, so I'm just using those to help apply pressure to get those eyelashes in place. Now for my girl mouse, I wanted to add some rosy cheeks. So I'm grabbing a little blending brush and I'm using Tattered Rose to add in some cheeks. So I start off really soft. I kind of tap off my brush until I realize that I need a lot more color. This is a pretty light ink. So I just keep ink blending until I get some cute, soft pink cheeks. And I really like how this turned out. After that, we'll start finishing up the rest of the top of the pail. So I'm going to add in the handle. I wasn't really sure on the placement at first, but I'm going to add it to the top of the pail, which I know kind of isn't correct. That should be more connected to the bottom part of the pail, but this is how I'm doing it, and that's okay. So I'm just adding some liquid adhesive to the sides where they attach to the pail, and it will go up a little bit to stick to the ears a tiny bit. I was going to add more glue to like fully glue it down, but I end up just kind of leaving it like that. So I did the boy mouse, and I wanted my girl mouse to have polka dots, so I used pops of color in white, but I didn't like the way it was drying. It was looking more pink than white. So later on, you'll see I'm going to completely tear her apart and use some red polka dotted paper that I found here in this paper pad to rebuild her. So I'm going to do A2 size cards to put these buckets on, but they will be bigger than A2. The ears will stick out further, so you would have to make a custom envelope for these, but I'm making these as samples for the Sassy Club, so I'm not going to be making an envelope for them. They're just to provide some inspiration for the Sassy Club when they do craft fairs, like expos and everything. So I'm just going to make some fun cards. So I'm cutting two background pieces. I do one out of red and white polka dots and one out of black and white polka dots, and I'm adding those to my A2 card bases. I trimmed these backgrounds down to be slightly smaller than A2, so it was like 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So you'd have a nice little tiny white border around the background. And this is when I just don't like the polka dots. But I didn't want to start all over. So I'm trying to rip up the red pieces. So I'm ripping the bow off the top part of my pail, and I ripped the face off and all the little pieces, and luckily it was fine. I mean, it looks gross right now because I, peeled everything off, but when I glue everything together, it's going to look just fine. So I'm adding a little bit of that red ink to my pieces. I did a little too much, I think, on the bottom pail, but that's okay. So I glued everything back together just like I had done previously, and I don't think you can even tell that I did some damage control for these pieces. So now I'm going to attach these buckets to the front of my card. As you can see here, the ears do stick out, but I think they just look so fun. I'm not going to add any sentiments or anything. I think it would be cute to put something, along with sweets or some kind of candy inspired sentiment. But I just wanted to put these buckets onto card bases, keep things pretty simple for these two cards. So I'm adding some foam adhesive, and I'm going to do this for all of the separate pieces of my little basket dies here and attach them to the card base. So fully covering the back of their faces, the bottom part of the candy baskets, and then making sure not to add any foam where the ears stick out past the edges of the card. So here you can see I'm putting together the boy mouse, and I did the red and white polka dots for him since that's what I ended up using for the girl mouse. I didn't want to do red polka dot on red polka dot, so I put the black polka dot behind my girl mouse. So here's a close-up look of how the boy mouse candy basket turned out. And here's my cute little girl. I think they just look so fun. I hadn't used these dies before, so it was fun to just open them up and play with them. For our second project, we're getting into the Christmas spirit now. I've already die cut the sweater die out of some white cardstock, and I cut two M's, the letters as well as their shadows from the Varsity die set. And I did the shadow die out of some green glitter paper from Lawn Fawn, and then the dark red M's are from a dark red cardstock. So I'm going to be stamping the new stamp set that was just recently released, the Xmas sweater stamp set, and they have these really adorable stitched images on there. Some traditional Christmas looking, like the reindeer and the trees and snowflakes, but I also love these cute little Fandom mouse details that look like they're embroidered or stitched into the sweater. So I'm going to just create a nice fun little pattern, and I'm going to use two different colors to create this look on the white stamp set. I want to use red and green, and I normally grab my VersaFines, but they just didn't match. So I'm going to use chili pepper ink from Lawn Fawn, which matches the chili pepper cardstock that I used. And then I thought that the Distress Ink Lucky Clover matched the best with that green sparkly cardstock. So that's what I'm going to use for stamping. And I'm using my Misty to make sure I get things lined up straight. And it allows me to stamp twice if things don't turn out great the first stamp. So I'm starting with the cute little mouse ears and hearts and then moving into the trees. And like you could see here, I needed to stamp twice because Distress ink isn't always the easiest to stamp with. So I like using a Misty to make sure everything looks nice. So I'm going through each row. Now this particular stamp didn't fit all the way across my sweater at this point. So I went about halfway that I know it will be covered by my M die cut letters when I finish the card. So I finished all of the different patterns that I wanted on my sweater, but again, I didn't want it to look flat. So I'm going to bring out my Lost Shadow Distress ink and I'm going to use these post-it notes that I got for free to mask off the sides of the sweater. So I could use some Lost Shadow to add color and depth and dimension to my sweater. So I got a little smarter and remembered that I have my waffle flower brushes that are a little bit more dense. That probably would have been much easier to add the cheeks to my girl mouse candy bucket, but that's okay. And I'm just picking up some ink and tapping it first on my post-it notes because I didn't want to go in with too harsh of a line. I'd rather build up the ink. And I'm just trying to add a little bit of shadow along where the sleeve and the sides of the sweater meet. And after I do that, I'm going to go in and add some around the edges of my sweater as well. So I'm just using these post-it notes as a mask and adding shadow wherever I think shadow would look nice on my sweater. So definitely where the sleeve and the sides of the sweater meet, there would be some shadow. And then I'm going to add some along the sides of the sleeves as well, like towards the bottom. And then I thought, you know what, I should probably add a little bit on the top too. So I'm going to add some to the shoulders and a little bit as well. I didn't want my like cuffs of my sweater to be super gray, but so I've started with trying to mask it off, but I thought it looked kind of weird. So then I went in with gray. I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling how I think it would look nice, the different shadow areas of my sweater. I really don't have any light source on this card, so I'm just adding it where I think it would just help make the sweater look more dimensional. Once I'm finally done, I can move on to getting my M's ready to go to add on to the sweater. So I'm going to use liquid adhesive to glue my two parts of my M's together. So I'm going to add it to the back side of the red die cut M and glue them to the sparkly green. Now, glitter cardstock can be very difficult to glue to, so you have to have some patience. So I had a healthy amount of liquid adhesive behind the red M, and to apply pressure, I'm just going to use one of my magnets on my glass board. They are super strong, so it will definitely put pressure on those two letters to adhere together. I did that on my other M as well, and now let's start putting together our card. I'm going very simple. My goal for these projects were really just to play with my new supplies and have some fun. And I just thought I would document the process and share with you and some tips that I have learned along the way with playing with these different Sassy Club items. So my sweater is really big, which is nice. It fits perfectly on an A2 card. I did the same thing with this red sweater background. This is really old pattern paper. I did link down below in the description my supplies, and I picked there's two patterns you'll see in this video that are old and I don't even know. I think they're Stampin' Up! From who knows how long ago. So I did link down some kind of similar pattern paper that you could use, but definitely just use what's in your stash. I also have like a sweater embossing folder, which would have looked really cool. So if you don't have paper, maybe you have a background stamp or an embossing folder that could work instead. And because the sweater is large enough, I know that I don't need to add a lot to my background. So I'm just going to add my sentiment. And this background was trimmed, which is what I was saying earlier. to be slightly smaller than A2. So again, that 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm going to add this sentiment from the Christmas or Xmas Magic stamp set that came out last year, I believe. Has these adorable Fandom characters. So again, our 2 mice and 2 little chipmunks, as well as some Christmas sentiments and like cute little detail stamps. I'm going to use the holly berries and leaves after I'm done adding my sentiment. So I stamped my sentiment with clear embossing ink, and I'm going to use white embossing powder to really have my sentiment stand up and against that red and kind of busier pattern background. So once I have the embossing powder in place, I went ahead and heat it up with my heat gun, and it says it's the most wonderful time of year. And while it's cooling down, I'm going to stamp the little details that I want to add to my card as well. Again, holly berries, and there's these 2 leaves, kind of a bigger one and a smaller one, and I will stamp those in the same ink colors that I did my sweater. So bringing in the chili pepper Lawn Fawn ink and the Lucky Clover Distress ink pad. And I'm going to stamp 2 of each so I can have 2 little holly berries and leaves on either side of my sentiment. So I'm going to use my Misty again because sometimes these inks don't stamp perfectly the first time, and that's okay. That's why I like using the Misty. And then I fussy cut all of those little tiny images out using my Spellbinder scissors that I love so much. They're the best for fussy cutting. I'm going to use some foam adhesive to pop up my sweater, so I covered it with my foam adhesive roll, and I'm using my grid mat to help me make sure I get my sweater as centered as possible, trying to leave an equal distance above my sentiment to the top of the card and making sure that the sweater is centered from left to right. I get the little holly leaves and berries arranged how I like them, and I'm just going to use liquid adhesive to glue the leaves down. I tried to switch up the location of the large and small leaves so they look a little different on each side of the sentiment. And then I popped up my berries with the same foam adhesive as I did my sweater, so they're on the same like dimension level. Once I get that final berry in place, I'll go ahead and add this to my A2 card base. Now I'm a big fan of top folding A2 card bases, and I use white cardstock. I try to use really heavy Nina white cardstock for my card bases, and I went ahead and added some tape runner behind my background, and I'm gluing this to the center of my card. I like to start from the top where the fold is just in case my scoring was off. I can always trim my card base down if I need to. And that is my first Christmas card and third card of this video. So now we're jumping into the last project, which I use lots of new things for this card. I started with die cutting the Wreath border die from the Sassy Club. I did the ribbon out of that same sweater pattern paper that I used for the last card. And again, I like to add a little bit of dimension to my die cut, so I used a blending brush to add some red ink, the same red ink I've been using, Lumberjack Plaid, and just added some shadow to these bow pieces. And I'm using liquid adhesive and my tweezers to help me glue the bow together. So there's like one big bow die, and then there's little add-ons to do the ribbon ends of the bow as well as the center knot of the bow. So just gluing all those together to make a cute little layered bow. Next, I'm going to glue these little cute mouse ornaments together. I die cut them out of red glitter paper. I wanted them to be super shiny, and I die cut the tops of the ornaments out of some shimmery silver cardstock, and I'm just gluing those together, and again using my magnets to help apply pressure for those pieces of cardstock to stick to my glitter cardstock. I die cut the wreath frame die twice, once out of some cilantro cardstock from Lawn Fawn and the other out of that same glittery green cardstock that I used on the last card. And I'm going to layer them together to create a fuller wreath with more dimension. So I'm going to start with adding one corner. I trimmed it in half diagonally because I'm going to offset the glitter green border to be able to show more through the cilantro brighter solid green cardstock wreath. So I added adhesive, so I double-sided adhesive to the backside of the green smooth cardstock, and then a little bit of liquid adhesive to the glitter, and I'm adding it again kind of offset, and I also rotated this wreath 180 degrees so that way it was different. You're not like gluing the same looking wreath behind it. It's a different pattern. And I just trimmed off the corners that would stick out past the edge, and you can see that the wreath looks more full, and I really like when I use a glittery cardstock for this because it kind of just adds a subtle shine underneath your solid green cardstock. So I did the same thing for the other corner, glued it down, and then again, I'll trim off any pieces that stick out past my A2 frame. Now this frame actually isn't A2 in size, but it nests really nicely on an A2 card. And after that, I'm going to think about how my green looks very bright, and I kind of wanted to mute it down a little. So I'm going to grab my Lucky Clover ink pad again and a blending brush and just kind of add a little bit of ink to the edges of my card or this wreath frame. I went a little too heavy in that corner, but that's okay. I just really wanted it to have some depth, and it was just a little too bright green for me. And I'm going to glue this later on to my background, which is an A2 piece of Kraft cardstock with this pretty like white scallop detail. Again, it's very old, I think from Stampin' Up! Many years ago, so I did link down another Kraft design that you could use in its place in my list of supplies down below. So my background is pretty much ready to go. I'm going to do some stamping, but I'm going to go ahead and assemble my card together as much as I can. So I'm going to adhere this wreath frame with foam adhesive to my A2 background. So I'm going to trim this just to fit on all four sides of the frame. I peeled off the release paper, and then I will center the frame onto the Kraft cardstock. I really like these two colors together, this like green and Kraft. I think it looks really nice. Then I'm going to add my bow. Now it will overlap a little bit outside the A2 card. So again, if you don't want it to be bigger than A2, you're just going to have to lower your bow a little bit compared to where I'm placing it. But again, these are just sample cards, so I can be a little more creative with the boundaries of my cards. I added foam adhesive to where the bow comes into the inside of the wreath, and then liquid adhesive where it overlapped with the wreath. And I'm doing the same thing with my ornaments here. I'm going to put them in the corners, and I even tucked in one of my little ornaments into some of the details of the wreath, which I thought was really fun. Next, I'm going to grab a sentiment, and this is from the UFO Christmas stamp set. I'm stamping Merry Christmas Human, and it fit just perfectly in between my two ornaments. I probably should have stamped it before I glued everything together, but with my Misty and using VersaFine ink, it always turns out pretty good. So I stamped that sentiment right there at the top, and let's move on to our two little aliens. There are 3 different ones in this stamp set, but I just wanted to use the Santa alien and the reindeer alien, so I stamped them in Sassy Club's black ink, which is perfect for alcohol marker coloring, and I'm using my Oh Hoo Hoo Honolulu markers. I prefer the B markers as they have a brush and nib, but I do have some of the A's as well, which is a brush and chisel. So I'm going to start with coloring in the reds of my Santa. The darkest color was R230, my medium tone was R3, and my lightest one is R1. And I went ahead and colored in the Santa hat and suit, as well as the collar of my reindeer in that color combination. For the black, I'm using CG208, and that will be for Santa's belt and shoes as the darker color. And then the lighter one, I'm using CG204. And I'm actually going to use the same color combination for my reindeer, his feet as well. I was going to say hooves, but I guess because he's just dressed up as a reindeer, it's still his feet. For the white parts of my Santa, I'm using CG200, and I didn't actually do anything else. I was going to use my colorless blender, but I liked the shadow as it was. For the golds on the card, which would be the belt of Santa as well as the bells of my reindeer, I used YR33, and then for coloring in my little aliens, so their face and their hands, I used the green color combination of G190 as the darker, GY4 as my medium, and G050 as the light. Then I moved over to my reindeer, where my darkest brown is BR1 and my midtone is BR2. Now I only use two colors for the darker part of my reindeer and two colors for the lighter part. So my third and final light color is BR3. And again, I'm going to use that same black, which is really just a dark gray combination for the reindeer's feet. I went ahead and fussy cut them out with my, again, favorite Spellbinder scissors. And we're going to add some foam adhesive to the back of these two cute little aliens and attach them to my card. So once I have the layout kind of figured out, I'll go ahead and add a bunch of foam adhesive behind my characters. I like to use my 1/8 of an inch strips from scrapbook.com for a lot of these because it allows me to really get into small places like my little antlers of my reindeer. And once I have them covered, I'll go ahead and take off all of the release paper off the back of the foam adhesive and attach these to my card. I really love this stamp set. I think they're so cute, and there's so many other fun little details in the UFO Christmas stamp set, like the Space Ranger stocking. Very cute. This time I'm doing a side folding A2 card because it's sideways, so it will still be top folding. And I'll attach this to my card base. Again, I like to start from the folded scored side, so if I didn't get it lined up perfectly, I can always trim my card base down. And look how cute this card is. So let's do a recap of all the cards I made today. I have my two candy basket dies with the mouse gingerbread add-ons. I have my sweater die with the Christmas sweater stamp set, and I also brought in Christmas magic. And then finally, my wreath border die and the UFO Christmas stamp set. Everything I use is from the Sassy Club when it comes to dies and stamps, and I absolutely love her product. So make sure you check out the Sassy Club's Christmas items. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas season and a happy new year, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!